Then the second half of the question was to go down the entire defense, correct?
Yeah, there was a lot there about defensive personnel, schemes, and coaching.
Sure, no problem. So the defensive personnel, I'll start off at the defensive line. I'll work my way back to the secondary, and we'll get into each of their coaches, and we'll talk about them, all right? So I've already gone into Coach Jess Simpson, our assistant head coach and our defensive line coach, former NFL defensive line coach for the Atlanta Falcons of their last 2 seasons for just strictly working on defensive line. Miami is returning Nesta Silvera. Miami's also returning John Ford as returners on the defensive line. We're losing Quincy Roche, a 3rd or 4th round pick at defensive end. We're also losing Jalen Phillips, a 1st round edge rusher. To replace them based on numbers, not necessarily production just yet, but to replace them, we're bringing 53 from middle linebacker to defensive end, and Jafar Rai, found out that's how you're supposed to pronounce his name, Jafar Rai Harvey on the weak side defensive end, number 12 for the Miami Hurricanes. Now, Jafar Rai has not produced, but his snap count has been pretty low. He hasn't had a chance to have this big breakout season, jump off the screen to us, because he had maybe 18, 20 snaps per game from last season. So the question mark around him is he going to give us something eerily similar to what we've seen? We kind of been spoiled with defensive line production over the last couple of seasons, whether you go all the way back to 2017 up until present day. Been kind of spoiled for like 4 seasons when it comes to defensive line play, with each and every starter on that defensive line being drafted. That hasn't happened here in a while. Whether even rotational guys like Trent Harris is still on the active NFL roster right now for the Patriots rushing the passes. So, and he was undrafted. So we had him coming off with 8.5 sacks in 2017 as just a 3rd down situational pass rush. I expect there to be a little bit of a step back on defensive line, which is going to put a lot more pressure on our secondary and even more pressure on the linebacking core, which is a huge question mark as to what they're going to bring to the table. Moving back to our linebackers, they're going to be coached by Coach Jonathan Packey, who has been our strikers and special teams coach. You're going to have B.J. Jennings, Sam Brooks, Wayman Steed, Keontra Smith. I think those are the only people really worth bringing up at this point. So that's the 2 deep, that middle and outside linebacker. Now, Keontra Smith is somebody who was a striker. He's moved to weak side linebacker, and he was the best linebacker on our field for us in the spring game. So that should already tell you what was happening right there. Okay, move over to striker. They're going to be coached by Coach Ishmael, the transfer. I'm so used to saying transfer. Coach Ishmael came over from Texas A&M, who was head of recruiting not head of recruiting. He was assistant recruiting and assistant linebackers coach. Now he's coming here as a first-time on-field coach for the University of Miami with Gilbert Fryerson, to me, arguably our best defensive player based on how he played last season. He's going to be backed up and splitting reps with Amari Carter, somebody who I've spoken about for the longest should be moved closer to the LOS so that he can make plays on the ball instantly instead of being way back there. 6'2", 215, you probably should be playing safety. It's just that simple, especially if you're lacking in coverage, you're lacking in the speed required in a too high system. Doesn't really make much sense to me. You also have Chase Smith, number 41, a 6'4", 200-pound freshman already. If you go to our recruiting rankings, he was listed as an athlete because if you watch his film, he played wide receiver, tight end, linebacker, safety, corner, punt, kick return. He's moving just to striker. So expect there to be a really big jump in the athleticism and him fighting for snaps there. Let's move on to corners. You have DVD, former Miami Hurricane here, DeMarcus Van Dyke, who is their coach. He also was here, head of recruiting for wide receivers and defensive backs for the last couple of seasons. Now moved to an on-field position. He swapped places with Coach Mike Rumph, who moved over to recruiting, 100% to recruiting, all right? So you got that going on at cornerback. I'm excited about it because as I watched the film, I saw a lot of those little things, man. A lot of those little things that I hadn't seen here in a while. Look, locate, turn around, and attacking that freaking football, Mark. It seems so simple, and it's just like How do we allow Efren Bandit and Coach Mike Ruff or whoever was to blame for what was happening, how do we allow that to continue to go on for as long as it did? How do we continue to allow these excuses to infiltrate our program and we just let it roll because we were still looking good on defense? Okay, one of the things I hate is the statement of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that is one of the most simple-minded statements ever. Because just because something isn't broken doesn't mean it can't be upgraded. I mean, I could have an iPhone 6 right here in my hand, Mark. That's actually a 10. But I can have a 6. It still works. I still answer the phone. It's not broken. So I'm just hanging on to this as long as possible. Why? When I can go to Verizon and get an updated phone for free. And it'll make my experience easier. It'll make my experience better using that phone. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's what's going on with when it comes to the cornerback production. Now, let's get to our players. Tyrique Stevenson, transfer from Georgia, comes down, and all our fan base, Mark, had everything in the world to say. Every time I watch a highlight tape, Tyrique Stevenson is getting bombed. Like they're going to put him breaking up a pass on a highlight tape to excite the fan base. Really? So we get to the spring game, right? And this man I think he gave up maybe an under route for a couple yards, and then they stopped throwing his way. This doesn't make any sense to me, Mark. But hey, that's what happens when we have the society we do now where something flashes in your face. You got to react as opposed to looking deeper into the situation and letting things unfold before we throw out our opinion. It's that simple with that. With Tyrique Stevenson. Now, DJ Ivey had an undisclosed injury. So when Avonte Williams comes in for a tackle, Jalen Knight, and he eludes the tackle, and he runs right into the knee of DJ Ivey. So that's what happened. We don't know if it's hopefully it's not an ACL or MCL or anything like that. But he was injured and he stayed out for the rest of the spring game from that knee injury. And then when it came to the report and the post-presser, Coach Manny Diaz didn't speak on there being any injury. So maybe they just held him out after that. It was just looked like his knee kind of buckled and they just held him out for a little bit after that. But DJ Ivey almost gave up a deep bomb to D. Wiggs. We all know that he still gives up. His speed is not all of that. We have very young at safety with Bubba Bolden being out. Girvin Hall had one heck of a spring game. And Avonte, we'll get to safeties here soon. But there was still a little bit of miscommunication. D. Wiggs pops open for a deep route. They both go down to the ground. And as they hit the ground, the ball pops out. You know, DBs hop up and celebrate with anything. I still was a little disappointed because how the heck do we let this dude get behind our safety and our corner? Got to make sure we have a lot better communication on that in the back end. Behind them, Corey Couch was out. Marcus Clark was out. So Jalen Harold, 6'4", 200-pound dude. Man, Mark, I didn't even know they made DBs that big. This dude is huge, man. And it makes me happy because when I turn on the film and I watch our players, I'm not saying we're Ohio State. I'm not saying we're Clemson. I'm not saying we're Bama. I mean, heck, we're not even UNC until proven otherwise. But it's starting to look like we're getting those type of physiques. Our players are starting to look good as opposed to not. As opposed to us looking like anomalies and all we care about is speed and our dudes are just little and they can't bang. They can't get in there because they don't have the right SEC or NFL type physiques. Modern day bodies, and we're starting to see that at the University of Miami. Lastly, safety with Coach T-Rob, former coach, defensive back coach at Florida back in the heyday. He's produced multiple first rounders in Hargraves. He also had Tease Tabor. He also had the South Carolina corners, Horn, who's getting a lot of first-round conversation. He was his recruiter and coach through the whole process at South Carolina, former defensive coordinator. I mean, just a lot going into Coach T-Rob, and he comes here as just DBs. He's not co-DC. He is an assistant head coach. He's defensive backs. Okay, now, yes, he's safeties, but him and DVD are working together with both the corners and the safety. We also have been having some cross training going on there too, Mark. Got a little Bubba Bold in that corner every now and again, just teaching them, Girvin Hall at corner, teaching the methods of covering and man coverage, and stuff like that was not happening under the previous coaching staff with Coach Rumph and Coach Ephraim Band. It's just that simple. Let's get into our players at the end of the safety level. Avonte Williams, #1 safety in the country, 2 recruiting classes go. Was out that first year. A lot of people thought he would never play it down here at the University of Miami. I was even guilty of kind of falling deep down, like, you know what, he may never play here. Not only did he get cleared, but he stayed mentally prepared. He stayed focused. He stayed in shape, and he stands out, Mark. He just looks like something that hasn't been on our field in a while, and he showed up a lot. Yes, he did have that missed tackle where he whiffed an open field on Jalen Knighton, but man, what heck of a player. What a leader, what a great energy you want on the field playing football with you. Next to him, you had Girvin Hall, number 26. A lot of people are very saddened on him and soured on him because he wears the number 26 at Miami, and he's not Sean Taylor. All right? Who is? Whoever will be. Nobody. It's just that simple. That it just doesn't make any sense to me that now he must be a trash player because he's not Sean Taylor. And in my opinion, Mark, that number should have been retired a long time ago. This guy was murdered. It's not like he just passed away in his sleep. He was murdered. It's a tragedy. Give him his respects. Retire the number. Hang it in the Raptors. Let's leave it at that. It's that simple. When it comes to that number 26, all right? Behind them, you had a little bit of Keontre Smith playing a little safety. Brian Balaam, I think was he injured? I want to say, I thought I saw 27 make some plays out there. So he was there, but the talk of the town was really those two up top at safety. So that's just the spring breakdown. I have more players added to that. Also, my bad, I forgot about my guy, number 24 for Miami Northwestern, Cam Kinchens. He had a great game. He got his first career interception in the spring game, picking off TBD. So he played very, very well. He had some really good open field tackles on a 4-year guy in Mark Pope. This young man's 19 years old. He's able to tackle him in open space. So that was really good in my eyes too. So there's your breakdown, and hopefully I went and was able to give you all that you look for, all that you need as far as spring 2021 for the Miami Hurricanes defense. Scheme-wise, we ran a 4-2-5. In some instances, we ran a little bit more of a hybrid nickel, where we brought in Amari Carter and Keontre with the 2 inside linebackers, and then we brought a nickel in. So we played a little bit more of that. We keep the 2-high system at all times at Miami. That's just how we run things, so we don't get beat over top. And there goes your coaches, your personnel, and your scheme. There you go.